I'm replacing these 90s Squier tuners with these new Fleor vintage tuners, and there'll be some comparison to Gotoh tuners. You may have seen these offered for absurdly low prices on AliExpress, but the real price is somewhere between $7 to maybe $14 depending when you buy them. The photos and the reviews look vaguely optimistic. They come in about 10 nested plastic bags. The old ones work, so why change? Well, after 30 plus years, the plastic buttons seem to be degrading. Plus, I think vintage style tuners look proper on Strat headstocks. They say nickel, but they're not nickel, they're chrome. And I don't mind, I actually prefer chrome. The first big difference is lubrication. Gotoh SD91s come packed with grease. The Fleor tuners are completely dry. Okay, so we'll work some paraffin grease into the worm gear at least. I really need to find a better way to inject grease through a small hole. Fleor shafts are 6mm, the old ones were 1/4 inch, so I had to change the bushings. I opened up the holes just a little bit, so I didn't have to hammer them in. The glue's just to harden or seal the wood. Glue obviously doesn't stick to chrome. Fortunately, the Fleor tuners fit the existing hole spacing, so I didn't have to adjust anything. First time drilling holes on camera. Usually I just hold the block, but I stuck it down as I thought I needed all the help I could get. Didn't want to misdrill on camera. These first holes are 2.5mm diameter. I'm just breaking the surface and locating the centres. Now have a look at the difference in precision here. The edges of the stampings, the corners and the fold angles. The Fleor tuners are slightly more variable in dimension, and consequently I should have marked each tuner with the position at which it was drilled, so that each tuner went back into the hole, matching its own peculiarities. Anyway, here's the intermediate holes, locating the eventual pilot holes. Now I'm drilling 1.5mm pilot holes about 9mm deep. I'm using a couple of pieces of wood glued together as a drill guide to keep the holes roughly vertical. All of the original holes except one are getting covered by the new tuners. I only filled this one. It actually had split out the side of the headstock as well. The first Fleor screw was a bit of a disappointment. It would not screw. There's some blob of metal in the middle of the head preventing the screwdriver from engaging. But it turned out to be a bonus screw. There are actually 7 good ones in the package.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8!
And ultimately I didn't even use them. The screws were going to end up just 2mm away from coming through the face of the headstock, so I abandoned them. I also wasn't sure how good the steel was, whereas I knew the old 90s Korean steel was okay. You have to lubricate your fasteners. I like wax, maybe you like soap, chapstick or whatever, but something greasy or waxy to help the screw go in. Now this part would have been easier if I'd labelled the tuners with positions, but it wasn't a major problem, it went in pretty smoothly. So there we are. Turns out the original shaft holes also aren't perfectly in line. Well, it was done by humans with a template. CNC wasn't routine at that time. Now it looks good, but there's a problem. The high E and B strings kept detuning or just falling off. I thought they'd broken, but they just unrolled off the capstan. I've never ever seen anything like this before. I tried again, making sure this time to overlap the wind, but it still happened. The Fleor holes are very shallow and wide. You can't wind a string onto a post with no hole. There has to be something to resist the pull. And I think these holes just crossed the threshold of not providing the minimal resistance the 9th hour and the 11th hour strings needed to stay on. Here's the difference in internal dimensions. You can see the Gotoh's got a lot more. The Gotoh's got a lot longer string down a narrow hole. Anyway, I drilled the high E and B a little deeper, and I haven't had any problems since then, even though there's effectively less wind. I think if I had more windings, or perhaps if I'd wound around the slot in some kind of tortuous path, maybe it would have worked without drilling. But for me, the whole point of split post is not to do that. I dripped a tiny bit of oil down the post to delay rust on the freshly exposed steel. And are they even steel? Yes, they are. So I don't know, do I like them? I've got no idea. Maybe I'll put them on a Floyd Rose guitar where they are isolated once the nut is locked down.